There's only been about a week-ish of real football played at this point as of me recording this, so it's tough to come to too many overarching conclusions about anything other than like the Chiefs are still good and the Giants are still bad and the Browns want their money back. But other than that, I think there's really only one thing that I can state definitively, and that's that the new kickoff structure is going to change the sport. Because of the compressed space and faster pace of these new kickoffs, and how you essentially only have one single layer of coverage players, a lot of these returns tend to hit like a run play. We saw the Bears just last week bust out a trap blocking scheme where they let the L2 just run free right at the returner, and then they hammered him with a trap block from the 5, all while the other returner basically converted into a fullback and led the way from there. I mean, this is literally a run blocking scheme used in a kick return. I can only imagine what it's going to look like once special teams coordinators learn how to mimic counter runs, or maybe even doing a little bit of what the XFL used to do when they had this kickoff structure where they would design reverses into their returns. And they worked, by the way. The possibilities are endless, and the fact that return rates spiked up to 33% in week 1, a 5-year high for the league, that means that not only we're going to get to see more returns this year, but we're also probably going to see more big plays on those returns too, because there's just more ways structurally to pop that big play. Now, you might be saying to yourself, okay, Brett, well, if it's theoretically easier to pop a big return now by adapting run blocking concepts to your special teams unit, why are teams even going to take the risk? Like, what's stopping them from just booting the ball out the back of the end zone every single time? I mean, just look at what happened in the Bills game last week. Brandon Codrington got a 53-yard return because the kick cover unit for Arizona lost lane discipline, and then on almost every other kickoff for the rest of the game, the Cardinals just kicked touchbacks. They did not want to risk giving Josh Allen, of all quarterbacks, even better field position than he already had against a very bad defense, which is totally understandable. Plus, in a fun little twist of irony, in that very same game, the only reason Arizona was even in it in the end is because they also got their own big kick return that DJ Dallas housed for a 96-yard score. So both teams paid the price in the same game for not just kicking it out the back of the end zone. Considering all that, why would any team ever take the risk of not just kicking a touchback at every opportunity? Well, the short answer is that not all touchbacks are created equal. And the longer answer, unfortunately, involves a bit of math. Before I get to all that dumb nerd stuff, though, if you do want to go to an NFL game this weekend or maybe at any point this season and you want to see these kickoffs with your own eyes, you can get super cheap last-minute tickets to any NFL game on the Game Time app. Game Time specializes in finding those last-minute event tickets that always massively drop in price on the day of the event, whether it's football, concerts, theater, I mean, you name it, they got it. And they also have a new feature, by the way, called Game Time Picks that you can use if you just want to find something quickly, where they filter out all the thousands of seats that are available and they just show you the best deals on the best seats right then, which I personally love because I can just roll up to SoFi and find a ticket instantly. There's always something available. In fact, just to prove it to you, I'm recording this episode about 3 hours, actually 2 hours at this point, before the Bills and Dolphins game kicks off on TNF this week, and they have tickets available for like $90 to $100, and they're good seats. You can see the view from the seat on the app, so you know it's good. They also have all-in pricing as an option, so you can toggle that on to see the total cost up front. They have the lowest price guarantee as well, so if you find tickets in the same section and the same row for less, they will credit you with 110% of the difference. It's just a great app, so if you want to check it out for yourself, download the Game Time app, create your own account, use promo code BRETTK, and that will get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. Again, that is the Game Time app. Create your own account. Redeem promo code BRETTK for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you once again to the folks at Game Time for sponsoring today's show. And with that, let's talk about math. By rule, right now, there are two different kinds of touchbacks depending on where the ball lands on the kickoff. If it lands in the end zone and is down there, or if it lands in the end zone and rolls out the back, the offense will start at the 30. However, if the kick hits in the landing zone between the goal line and the 20-yard line, and then it rolls into the end zone and is down for a touchback, the offense will start at the 20. So there is a 10-yard field position advantage to hitting the ball into the landing zone, but still forcing a touchback, which is what we saw rookie kicker Cam Little pull off for the Jaguars just last week. He landed the ball right in the corner of the landing zone and then had it roll through the end zone just past the pylon and out the side of the end zone, which automatically downed the ball and created a touchback for Miami to start at the 20 instead of at the 30. That is a huge difference because drive scoring rates are higher when they start from the 30 compared to when they start from the 20, obviously. Last season, 285 possessions started from the 20, and the overall scoring rate on those drives was about 27%, while the 84 league-wide drives that started from the 30-yard line scored at a 3% higher rate at about 30%. Now, that may not seem like a big difference at first, but if you extrapolate that out to the entire season for every single team, if that rate roughly held over the course of that larger sample size, that would translate to every single team getting 5 to 10 more scoring drives per year just by consistently starting on the 30. Plus, on top of that, there's kind of a gamesmanship factor at play here with special teams coordinators where they might actually find it useful to make the other team start the majority of their drives at a certain yard line just based on who the opposing kicker is. And by that I mean their kickoff strategy might actually be determined by the max effective range of that opposing kicker. The league average yardage gained per drive last season across the entire league was 29.9 yards. So let's just round it up and call it 30 yards gained on average per drive. From a drive start position consistently at the 20-yard line, that means you can roughly expect the average drive to get somewhere in that middle 20-yard area of the field, meaning plus or minus 10 yards from the 50. That translates to a bunch of drives probably ending up in no man's land where the coach has to decide whether to go for it or to punt because they're mostly going to be out of field goal range. However, if you contrast that with drives that start at the 30, again, putting on that average yards gained per drive, that means they're going to end up somewhere plus or minus 10 yards from the opposing 40-yard line, meaning anywhere between the 50 and the opposing 30. That would put elite long-range kickers in position to attempt a field goal more often that's usually going to be somewhere around 45 to 55 yards, just to keep it conservative. That's no small feat, obviously, but it's very doable for many kickers in this league. And ultimately, that is the impact that will be created by that 10-yard difference in field position. And to bring this full circle, that's what we saw show up on that very same drive that Cam Little made Miami start at their own 20-yard line. Miami gained 38 yards on that drive, so again, a little bit above the league average because it's Miami, but they ended up in a 4th and 8 situation on the Jacksonville 42. That is the definition of no man's land. Either you try a coffin corner punt, which if it fails, you don't really net that much field position, or you try a 59-yard field goal, or you do what Miami did and you try to go for it on 4th and 8. They didn't convert, and so Jacksonville took over on their own 42. Forcing teams into that no man's land 4th down decision is largely why the percentage of drives ending in a field goal attempt jumps from 14% when it starts at the 20 to 21% when the drive starts at the 30. Because more often, you're going to get past that no man's land on your average drive when you start from the 30-yard line. Again, it doesn't sound like much, but over the course of an entire season in a sport where the majority of games are decided by one score, that matters. Those 10 yards matter. They literally could be the difference between winning and losing in any given week. It's easy to say, oh, just start the other team to 30 every single time if you're the Chiefs and your defense is good enough to get the stop anyway, because it just doesn't really matter for you. But if you have a bad defense and a good special teams unit, you're probably going to trust your special teams to get you that extra buffer of field position to help out your bad defense. And I know what some of you were thinking at home. You really want to limit your exposure to these returns, and if the ball lands in the landing zone but then doesn't go in the end zone, it has to be returned. Like, by rule, that has to be returned, and you're worried about that. But if your kicker is good enough, you can try to get people to muff the return or to at least bobble it like Brandon Aubrey did multiple times to Cleveland returners last week, and he did what I can only describe as like a Madden-esque scum kick that may or may not become the meta in the NFL, we'll see. Or again, you can do what Sanders did and just take the return entirely out of the equation while still putting it in the landing zone and pinning them at the 20. That's probably the hardest one to do. But again, if your kicker can do it, that is a massive advantage. Either way, the fact that there are so many options for kickoff teams to consider now based on weather, game situation, their own defense, and the strength of the opposing kicker, plus all the fun new strategies that return teams have now to try to pop a big play. I just think this is awesome. Kickoffs are hugely important now. You cannot just treat them like an extra bathroom break like we used to for decades and decades. It's a new era of special teams in the NFL, and I, for one, love it. One quick note before we get out of here, by the way. Well, actually, two quick notes. The first note is I released this on the store. We kind of did a revamp of the Philly Special hoodie as the first stage of us revamping all the old play art hoodies, which look like they were designed by me on Adobe Illustrator in a weekend, because they were. So I actually worked with like real designers this time to make them better. So the Philly Special hoodie is the first one that went up on the store. If you're an Eagles fan or a Nick Foles fan, you can find that there, linked in the description below. And secondly, if you want to hear all my thoughts on the Week 1 games, or you want to hear our thoughts on the Week 2 games in our preview show, those live over on our podcast channel, the Bootleg Football Podcast. So for whatever reason, my voice doesn't annoy you yet, and you want more, I know, sell the sizzle, Brett. I'm making a great case, but you can find all that over on the Bootleg Football Podcast channel. Again, that is also linked in the description below. So I don't think I have anything else for you. I will see you all next week.